Clock struck midnight. Where I live, it's now 2023. And I've had an idea for where I wanted this channel to go in the future. And now that I've completely finished school now and am in a relationship, I think it's time to officially rebrand the channel. I mean, the name Team Blaze 64 is gonna get outdated soon enough, and I want to try something different for the channel. You know, broadening my horizons. Okay, time to use the spell book that I haven't used since my 17th birthday special. God damn, can't believe it's been a long time ago now. Anyways, it says here, in order to rebrand your avatar and backdrop, you must think about what your new production name is going to be. Aha! I got it. I'm gonna call my production The Rider of Chaos. Not bad. I can vibe with this quite well. Oh, we also got a new intro. I was going to start the video right now anyways. At any rate, roll the tape, Kellen Quinn!
That nickname you love so much. Wanna know how I got it? Actually, why don't I give you a demonstration? I think it's time for Jack to let her rip.
Back in October, I thought of trying out a game called Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, considering its insane growth in popularity the last couple years, and the fact of me being a fan of the series after playing a solid quadrilogy. I was obsessed with Rising, but I played through the entire game at least 3 times in 2 weeks. And it's become my new favorite game in the series, quite possibly one of my favorite games of all time, and so, I thought I'd make a review of it as a part of my rebranding from Team Blaze 64 to the Rider of Chaos. Yes, this is no longer the only countdown channel, as I want to do gaming reviews too. At any rate, let's start.
What good is an intellect if you can't use it?
Your taunting is pointless. Exterminate!
This is gonna come probably as unoriginal as my usual at Domino's and Pizza Hut, but Rising's story is oddly weird, as in, you'll get laughs just how stupidly funny the dialogue can be, but you gotta remember one thing. This is a Hideo Kojima game, and Kojima is well known for wacky and mind-screwy dialogue in the series. And it was also made by Platinum Games, whose stories are off the damn rails that are stupidly awesome. Combine the two and you got something worthwhile. Metal Gear Rising, while not the final game in the series, is the final game in the Metal Gear chronological timeline in 2018, with cyborg enhancements revolutionizing the world because of PMCs, creating superhuman soldiers after the destruction of the Patriots. The story takes place after Metal Gear Solid 4, and you play as Raiden. After the fall of SOP, the war economy has been taking a clean break, but some warmongers decide to break the peace by starting terrorism and war, while also taking kids' brains to use them for VR training to turn the kids into cyborgs and killers. I will say that I really like this idea for the story, since it focuses a lot more on politics and philosophies a lot more than the other games in the series, especially when you go deeper into the characters themselves. Raiden grows over time throughout the entire game, starting off as a man of justice protecting the weak as his ideals, but when reawakening Jack the Ripper by Monsoon made Raiden realize his true nature and calling. Wolf is one of my personal favorites in the game, an interface prototype that always follows whatever directives he's established, all while having a great sense of humor to top it all off. All the members of Desperado, Mistral, Monsoon, Sundowner, and Jetstream Sam are all interesting in their own rights, and Senator Armstrong just being the mastermind behind it all is really something else. You meet other characters along the way, such as Sunny and George, and are joined by Mavericks, Boris, Kevin, Courtney, and Doctor for the operations. Every single character is very interesting, even some may get very little screen time like Dulciev and that pizza-eating weeb at Solus. Really, not even 2 minutes of screen time and you made him great. How do you even? While nothing too noteworthy, graphic-wise, Metal Gear Rising is pretty good and a huge improvement upon Metal Gear Solid 4's, but it really proves it in some areas, specifically in Mission 4 when you infiltrate World Marshal, that the insanity just goes all out with jumping on top of enemies and running on the side of a rainy skyscraper, and even during that one sequence at the end of a Sundowner confrontation. And for a late PS3 and Xbox 360 game, it definitely really shows, and it still holds up to this very day. The cutscenes themselves are pretty great too. They have pretty great animation, topping it off with amazing action-packed moments. And I'm gonna talk about gameplay next, but the presentation really kicks into the gameplay too, and it proves it during my first boss, from not only throwing the Metal Gear into the sky and slicing it in half, but the second confrontation comes around, and for the finisher, you're jumping from rocket to rocket and running down a clock tower for the sake of slicing the thing in two yet again. The frame rate of this game is also incredibly consistent the whole time. I've never experienced any drops in frames when playing through it, so kudos. It makes the gameplay and the cutscenes feel so smooth to play. I just have one major problem, but this is leaning towards the cutscenes. Many of the cutscenes love to use this slow-mo effect so often, and while it isn't anything inherently bad, it gets pretty bland after a while and sometimes really does not need to be used. And of course, the cream of the crop of Metal Gear Rising goes to the goddamn soundtrack composed by Jamie Christopherson. This soundtrack is definitely up there as one of the greatest gaming soundtracks of all time, and I am so in that category. Not only is every track badass as hell, but the lyrics have even more of a noticeable story than any other song that anyone could put two and two together so freaking easily. The boss music will start off with the instrumental version before getting to the last phase of the fights when the vocals will start to kick in. I'll give you guys a listen to some of my favorites. The boss and battle themes are so great that this sadly makes the rest of the soundtrack completely overshadowed, specifically the cutscene music. Props to Gmaster2647 for uploading literally every single track in Metal Gear Rising. The voice acting is also done pretty superb, with some of my favorites going to Quinton Flynn as Raiden and John Kassir as Monsoon. And as for how the audio handles in general, it's pretty consistent, as always keeping a balance between the music, voices, and sound effects. The gameplay is what made me fall in love with this game immediately when I did the tutorial. The combat feels fluid and smooth with the different options of heavy and light attacks. With the ninja run ability as well, Raiden can not only deflect bullets but jump over and between and slide under debris, hills, and platforms. Using the ninja run while also spamming the light attack button not only makes it more easier to dodge enemy attacks, but it also allows you to rack up damage when you're running and slashing your way through. You can unlock many different moves as you progress through the game through the customizable menu, which I will get to in a sec. And combining different combinations of movesets together allows your personal preference of playstyle throughout your experience. Parrying is also a staple move, as timing it right will deflect an enemy back and possibly catch them off guard for you to counter-strike. And that's before we talk about the awesomeness of Blade Mode. Blade Mode allows Raiden to finish off bosses and attacks right at the weaknesses, but it is mainly used to hit the cyborg soldiers and Yuji's weak points and steal their electrolytes to refuel both your health and Blade Mode energy back to full. And if you really want to have a lot more fun, when you get the chance to, you can also slice off enemy limbs to help you gain the advantage. And later on in the game, you unlock Ripper Mode. Ripper Mode doubles damage and can kill some of the toughest enemies in an instant. and it's even useful in some of the later boss fights that can be a bit troublesome. Speaking of the bosses, they're pretty much the meat and potatoes of the game alongside the soundtrack and the dialogue. I'll go over them one by one. Your first boss is frickin' Metal Gear Ray, and for a tutorial boss, it's pretty insane. Blade Wolf's fight is more so along the lines of testing you how good you are at dodging and parrying, while also keeping it as a fun and challenging fight. Mistral's fight is underrated. Her minions are annoying at times, and admittedly she is nothing special, but compared to the other members of the Winds of Destruction, she's quite a fun time. Monsoon is a highly misjudged fight. Yes, he can combo you insanely, and he can make himself invincible, but while constantly throwing EMP grenades toward him, the boss basically wants to test you on how much of a pro you are at parrying, and if you got it down, he is one of the best fights in the game, which in my opinion, he is. And yeah, he's difficult, but nowhere near as much as Sundowner, the disappointingly worst boss fight in the entire game. After building up on the cruelty of kids and the plan potentially rivaling 9/11, he's a defensive frick. The line to sever the shield is annoying to do. It's thin and it's easy as hell to frick that up and get blasted away, and cutting the connectors will get to his second phase, which you can skip if you choose not to cut the connectors. And don't even try to slide attack him, as he will just instantly block with his shield just to blast you to infinity and beyond. At least Sam is the saving grace. A one-on-one rivalry battle of equal showdown in the Sun-City Badlands, parrying against Sam all while attempting to outsmart him. Metal Gear Excelsis is not a bad boss, but it's pretty boring. And then comes Senator Armstrong. Meme culture aside, the final boss is so awesome and is one of my favorite final bosses in gaming history. I would talk about Compton and the fights you fight in the Jetstream Sam DLC, but I haven't bought the DLC, so... So yeah, combat is great, but how are the levels themselves? Pretty darn interesting. Stealth makes less of an impact since it's more action-oriented, but there are times where you can just avoid conflict just by being stealthy. And the levels are mostly fun objectives that make them pretty fun and stand out from one another. However, because the game only has 8 missions in its entirety, you could beat the game in less than 4 hours, which is a bit of a big downside, especially since after mission 0, missions 1 to 4 usually go on for 25 to 50 minutes each, while missions 5 to 7 are usually around 5 to 25 minutes each. And as for the enemies, most of them are fun to fight, but get to Guadalajara and you'll start to encounter enemies you'll have a tough time killing. Especially if you had a tough time killing one of them, and you'll have an even harder time killing 3 or 4 of the same enemies. I'm trying to break my enemies, not my controller. However, the customizables are a pretty great feature, upgrading your health and fuel cells, buying and enhancing weapons, even the weapons you get from the bosses you've killed, your cosmetics from a mariachi disguise, and a Desperado enforcement palette. Having this feature makes the game very flashy, if I do say so myself.
Come on! Okay. Let's dance.
There is no reason not to play Metal Gear Rising. The popularity this game has been getting the past couple years has been growing exponentially. If you're a longtime fan of the Metal Gear series, or if you love hack and slashes and Platinum Games' work, then I highly recommend you play this game. And trust me, you're missing out if you haven't played it, because it is worth every second of playtime. Despite the game having cons that are easily recognizable, even from a casual player's point of view, it's still an insane masterpiece. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is my favorite game in the Metal Gear series, and I highly doubt that is going to change anytime soon. I'm User One Campbell, and see you all next time.